You clearly had an erection up there.
No, I did not. You were lying.
What's going on, man? The man.
Come on. He actually has a pocket square this time. Last time, it was a napkin. He got caught.
You guys might want to pour a little alcohol on his ankles. It's a little ashy, bro.
Come on, cut me some slack.
You got him, he had to get you back.
That's crazy.
He had to get it back.
You looking good, though.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Looking good, son.
Communication.
Hey y'all, it's your captain for all things creative coming at you with a Married at First Sight Season 20 midway point review and prediction video. So if you're new to this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're returning, thank you so much for rocking with us. Now let's get into Married at First Sight midway through Season 20 check-in. So that means episodes 1 through 9. Now, from what it looks like online, it seems like there will be 20 episodes, and the way the new couple of seasons have been delivered is partly because it's on Peacock, whereas before you would get one episode a week on Lifetime, and it was easier for me to review the show when it was on Lifetime because I could really dive in, to what was going on, and I have enough time to do so. But when you're getting like 3 episodes at a time, it's like when I finally catch up, there's 3 new episodes. So I just decided to do this like midpoint review, even though technically episode 9 is not exactly the midpoint, but it's close enough because the couples have done their own, mini decision in front of the therapist and one another. And also we got through the weddings, the honeymoon, and again like the first big group dinner and group therapy session, so I thought it was a good time to check in. Also, last but not least, when thinking about these first 9 episodes, I actually realized that my vision for who's going to make it and say I do on decision day kind of correlates to how boring or exciting their storyline has been. So I think part of it is production maybe misleading us, but I'll give you my thoughts basically based on who I think will say yes first and then who I think will say no, at the end of my list. But at the end of the day, the ones at the beginning are kind of boring to me and the ones at the end are the most interesting. So it's gonna be a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of, some of the ones I think are getting a bad edit but are still interesting might, not follow that pattern that I just said. But basically, I'm going to go from who I think is going to say yes and who's kind of more boring to who I think going to have a more difficult time on decision day, but who is giving us, all the juicy drama and storyline. So let's go. Okay, so first couple that I think will definitely say yes, and they also said that they think they're going to say yes, are Cameron and Michelle. I think this couple has been having all the right conversations. They've talked about finances and also issues with like health and fertility, with the whole drama with fibroids. And at the end of the day, they clearly have lots of respect and care for one another. They're also, I think, the second oldest couple, so they have maturity and wisdom, and they're a little boring to be honest. But Michelle did kind of spice things up a little bit when she kind of called out Mecca, who we'll talk about later, in the group therapy session, for maybe not being as authentic. So Michelle, might surprise us with a little more drama just yet, but for now I think they're on the show for the right reasons. They're doing well, but some of their scenes are not that interesting to me. So let's go to the next couple. All right, the next couple that I think have a pretty good shot of making it, and they also said that they will say yes on the decision day finale, would be Tori and Felipe. I think there is a small chance that, some issues could haunt them. For example, Felipe being an atheist and also a past cheater, and Tori also getting a little bit stressed out or anxious, the first time they were intimate. It seems like even though the vibes and like the attraction seem to be there, Tori herself is internalizing some of the little red flags she's seen, like I said, concerning his religion and his past cheating. But I think Felipe actually does like her. So if he can truly let go of the streets and the partying and the nightlife, I think these two have every reason to make it. But if Felipe loses the passion and excitement and just wants to go back to his old ways by decision day, I wouldn't be surprised. But for now, I think they're going to make it. Next couple that I think actually is going to make it as well is Adam and then remember me, Marissa. I remember when they said they had known each other before. So it's interesting that fate seems to have brought these two back together again. I do think that Adam is showing probably more red flags, if you will, between the two of them, with what seems to be like some attention seeking kind of things, like, the bragging about the jet ski and the way he's constantly joking, and the experts, called him out on all of that. But at the end of the day, these two proved that if it were not, the show involved or TV producers, they would have gone for each other in the real world, even though this show, is just their real life being filmed. I do think that the cameras are an extra draw for Adam, but at the end of the day, I do think they do like one another and have feelings for one another, but there are a few things they have to work through that I think they can, in terms of Adam's minimizing, of serious things and wanting to err on the side of joking and lightweight conversations, and just other little things like Marissa not liking cats and things like that. But they probably will make it as long as they both dive in deeper and trust one another, to commit to the process a little more deeply. And I think they've shown that they are attracted to each other and care about each other and respect each other enough so far. Now here's where things start to get more interesting. This couple, I think there is attraction there on both of their parts. But at the end of the day, Devin is not getting what he needs from Caitlin. And Caitlin is, I think, self-sabotaging. I don't understand going on a show for marriage and lifelong companionship and then acting like you're gonna jump out of your skin when somebody wants to be a companion to you and to spend time with you. Like, it's a little bit bizarre. So it just seems like Caitlin, in theory, wanted to be married. I don't know if it's the pressure of society, thinking that's like something to check off, but her personality and her just set up in terms of her personality and visceral just discomfort with being around Devin or anyone, I guess she says, that wants to be clingy, just makes it seem like she does not really want to be married. I think she falls in the category of people who wanted the wedding but not necessarily the commitment. But I do think there's a lot of things going on that she alluded to, where she says, in the past she used to be very anxious and she's worked hard for her peace. And even at the wedding, the way her father, was objecting and trying to make sure that everybody in the room, including her, knew that he was unhappy about the situation. I just feel like there's a lot of things in her past that she has overcome including the control of her family, and again, wanting control over her own emotions and sense of peace. And it might be too soon to add another person into the equation of all of that if being around someone who you signed up to marry is just around you upsets the balance of all the peace that you tried to work for. It just seems like it's not gonna work, and I'm sorry to both of them. Now, the last two couples are basically who I thought would be the star of the show versus who actually became the breakout stars of the show. And this would have to be Nick and Courtney versus Nikki and Shawn. So when this season first started, I think the main draw was Nick because he been on was that The Circle and Perfect Match amongst other things. So he is a reality personality that I was aware of. And when I found out he was doing Married at First Sight, I was very unpleasantly surprised, and I just thought it was stunt casting basically. And to my surprise, he's actually having a great attitude. It doesn't seem like he's trying to seek attention more than any other person. And in his couple, actually the person who is making the most problems both in their union and with the other castmates has got to be Courtney. I'm sorry. Basically, Courtney seems like she's not happy most scenes, and the only time she has like a glimmer of joy in her eyes is when she's speaking badly on Nick and running down on him behind his back, and that is not a healthy way to do this process, especially because one, there are cameras. So if she thinks that doing all this is going to make her more sympathetic to the public, by showing that she's struggling, the way she's going about it is just mean and not very productive, because if she's not telling her issues to Nick, there's no way he can address them. So she's stewing in her misery. And the thing is, she's talking a lot, but she's not saying anything to him. And that's something I find fascinating, just the way there are people who can do non-speech. Like Courtney talks so much, but she's never saying anything of substance to Nick. And she is always in her head and always, verbalizing kind of like petty concerns and petty thoughts to Nick. So in his mind, they're doing fine. And he even said he thinks she's a great communicator. But a couple episodes later, when, they're talking to the experts, and even when they were at that group dinner scene, he realizes, oh my gosh, like, even though she talks to me constantly nonstop, she has not told me how she really feels about her. And I think it really hit him when she called him insecure. And somebody who's been on that many number of reality shows does not lack confidence. So even that read is just totally wrong. So I think a lot of times Courtney's mouth just moves faster than her brain and her heart, and she's just talking so much that she's not thinking. I just think Courtney's problem is she's not really internalizing, one, her part in why the relationship feels so uncomfortable, because it takes two hands to clap. If the marriage isn't working, both people have some kind of role in it, and even if Nick was doing everything wrong, the fact that she's not telling him her qualms and giving him a chance to address it, but then telling everybody else, talking behind his back, and even in front of her family, when she was like, oh, please tell me what's wrong with him. And then when he left, she was like, let's talk behind his back. And then the family was like, listen, I think you are looking for reasons to not like this man, but we like him. So if you don't like him, you got to search within you and name why. But again, I think Courtney needs the experts a lot more. And I'm glad that the experts, have kind of been clocking in a little better than the experts in the past. Even just the fact that they made sure that they were eavesdropping, on the big group dinner convo. And to, I guess, both Nick and Courtney's face, they addressed both of them and, didn't give Courtney too much, you know, I guess too much blame in the situation, and actually told Nick too that he has a part to play in terms of communicating. So I think that made her feel better about going forward and have them both share, the things that they need and the things that they want, so that again she doesn't have to feel probably the full weight of all that she's done behind his back. But at the end of the day, ooh, if I had to choose which person I think is more in the wrong, it's definitely Courtney. And again, I think Nick knows how to hold it together since he's been in reality shows for a long time. So I think he knows how to, keep a scene peaceful and keep, the flow of conversation going and maintain a positive attitude. But at the end of the day, he does also have to name when things are not working. And he's not doing that as much. But again, Courtney is speaking so much, like a mile a minute, but then not saying much of what her true issues with him are. So I don't think they're going to be a yes on decision day at all. I really think that Nikki is playing it cool, but I don't think he likes Courtney because he's not fighting for the relationship either, like the expert says. So he might be getting exhausted by the whole situation. And Courtney, again, I don't think she's processing what's going on. Her mouth is moving faster than her brain or her heart. So we shall see if she starts to process more. But I think the situation is pretty much doomed. And last but certainly not least, the true stars of the season, Shawn and Nikki. When I tell you that the experts actually put their foot in this match, I am just under reporting that because these two are actually quite compatible, and it's actually a great example of why you do not lie on them job applications or resumes, because Nikki got exactly what she asked for and she's sick because of it. And if she either stops lying to herself and the experts, she could walk away with a very nice marriage, or she and Shawn are just gonna have to part ways before decision day because it's way too much drama already. That is just unnecessary. So basically, Nikki done told the experts that she's a sapiosexual, and the problem is Nikki is very concerned about looks and status and all the external things on paper that she kind of admitted to when she was being stubborn about finances. But the way the experts just called her on what she asked for by providing this man who on paper and in real life intellectually stimulates her, but again doesn't quite check all the financial or appearance boxes, because she maybe didn't tell them that she wanted a certain height and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, she, I think, is a root of a lot of the problems in terms of the little digs she makes at Shawn about his height. But Shawn is definitely no angel because he is so intelligent and kind of sees Nikki for her works. He does speak to her in a condescending way, and even at the group dinner, he gives her enough rope to hang herself, and kind of, I think, does feel like he knows better than her about a lot of things, including, when she told him she wasn't attracted to him, he was like, yeah, right, you be tongue kiss me and all that. So at the end of the day, these two are each other's match, actually. But we'll see if Nikki especially gets out of her own head about the superficial things that she wanted on paper, because Shawn is being very patient, and Nikki needs to realize that, it gets dark and lonely out there. She knows that. That's why she applies on the show. So just the fact that this person does check most of the boxes, even though he does need to take a full bath, because that bird bath, was not it. So let's see what happens with them, because they have the most drama, but actually, if they get over themselves, they can make it. So let's see. Okay, and I had promised to talk about them when I talked about the first couple, because Mecca and Bel Jolie kind of became one of the couples that seemed strong at first, but because of what is actual insecurity, or seems like actual insecurity, is making both of them pull back from their initial attraction and positive feelings about the relationship. Now, the insecurities, especially on Mecca's part, is totally understandable, especially when you think back to the wedding, when his father literally did way too much to embarrass him during the wedding speech. Now, I know when people, make speeches, and especially during light-hearted kind of events like weddings, nobody wants to be the boring one that, makes people wish that they just shut up and stop talking so everybody could dance again. I need to get so. I know people like to build in jokes or whatever into their speech, but the joke should never be at the expense of people that you love and care for. And I definitely think that Mecca's dad did cross the line in terms of, making jokes that were at Mecca's expense, to the point that even Bel Jolie was like, why are you talking about my husband like that, And Mecca and Bel Jolie both have issues surrounding abandonment and not necessarily feeling accepted and supported by both their parents, because Mecca said, he had lost touch with his mom, and he has a lot of feelings of abandonment or rejection that stem from, that wound that is in his heart because his mother wasn't really in his life like that. And Bel Jolie also has issues rooted in, her father not being around as well. And even when she tried to establish a relationship with him, she did not get any sense, that he really wanted to connect with her, and even demanded that she do a DNA test, all kind of stuff that, reveal that both of them have every reason not to fully want to commit their hearts and trust to someone of the opposite sex. But at the end of the day, they both signed up for this process, so there's a loneliness. And it really broke my heart, when one of the experts said that Mecca basically said something to the effect of, like, he really can't wait for the time where somebody will really love him for him, or he can't believe that someone's actually going to, accept him and love him. And that was in the final group therapy session, that we saw. So just the fact that they're both playing games with one another is very sad, because they have a chance as people who are officially married, to just go full in and support one another. But because of that comment, that Mecca made about him feeling like Bel Jolie is more into him than her, or is more attracted rather. I think first he said 150% more attractive, but then he lowered it down to saying, well, he's 80% attracted and she's 60% or something like that. Or flip it around. He's 60% attracted and she's 80%. She pulled back on initiating any type of, affection and putting herself out there to show support and care. And then he realized that he was the one initiating all the kisses and attempts at intimacy for a while, and the experts had to break them out of it and say, listen, y'all gotta break out of your friend zone And so they skipped the intimacy homework and just went straight into having relations, which I don't think helped, because at the end of the day, the issue is not just the act of, being more physical and have a relation. It, again, has to do with the mental gymnastics that they're doing to not be vulnerable or not seem thirsty and then not be hurt again by someone who could re-trigger, those wounds of abandonment. So they need to go back and do those, trust exercises, basically, where they put themselves out there for the other more consistently in little ways. And I think they thought they were doing their big one by saying, well, let's have relations to break out the friend zone. But actually, what the experts had told them about, doing those smaller acts of, affection and trust building and love daily and consistently is something that they needed to do. So part of the problem is they're not listening to the experts, who are actually, again, giving much better advice this season at a more opportune time for them to actually make changes, but they're not listening. So we got to see what's going to happen with them. And I do think that, again, they had initial attraction. I had hope for them, but the amount of games they're playing with one another and the way they're not listening to the experts make it so that I'm a little worried. But I do feel like they have a better chance of saying yes on decision day than, let's say, Shawn and Nikki. But the fact that both of their childhood wounds are so deep, and the fact that I think Mecca has already sort of checked out, makes me worried about them. So I think, again, if they listen to the experts, they might have a chance to, turn the ship around. But at the end of the day, they are not on the path to saying yes on decision day, in my opinion. So yeah, say how you feel about all the couples and the season so far. And just remember that you are the master of your fate and you are the captain of your soul. All right, bye.